He tried to divorce me in secret. Too bad his lawyer was my college roommate. And she called me.
My phone started buzzing on the counter while I was still standing there with one hand in the dishwater, the other gripping a slick plate like I'd forgotten what to do with it.
Unknown number. My first thought was spam.
My second thought, this weird, immediate dread, was that something had happened to his dad, or my sister, or one of those random terrible things you don't expect until the day they happen. I dried my fingers on the hem of my shirt, left a wet streak on the fabric, and answered anyway.
Hello.
My voice sounded normal, which is the part that creeps me out now, how normal I sounded, like my body didn't get the memo yet. And then I heard someone inhale like they were bracing themselves.
Lena, a woman said. It's Mara. Mara Sayegh. From Huntington Dorm.
Please tell me you're alone.
I went so still my shoulders started to ache.
I hadn't heard that name out loud in years, but it hit me like a flash of fluorescent hallways and ramen cups and those late-night conversations where you swear your friendship is forever because you're 20 and you mean it.
Mara.
I said, stupidly, like repeating it would make her less real.
The kitchen window was open a crack.
I could hear a neighbor's wind chimes tapping softly. The dog clicked his nails across the tile and then stopped, watching me. My hands were damp again, not from water this time.
Yeah,
she said, and her voice had this tight edge to it, like she was smiling and wincing at the same time. It's me. Listen.
I can't talk long.
I shouldn't even be calling like this, but she paused, and I heard paper shuffle on her end, like she was looking at something she hated. Your husband came into my office yesterday.
He hired my firm. He's trying to file for divorce.
And he asked specifically how to do it without you finding out until you're served. It took my brain a full beat to even understand the sentence.
Husband. Office. Divorce. Without you finding out. Like it was a recipe.
Like it was an errand. My mouth opened, but nothing came out at first. I stared at the soap bubbles clinging to the edge of the sink, the way they caught the light in tiny rainbows, and I had this ridiculous thought, so specific it almost made me laugh, that I had bought that dish soap in bulk because it was more economical, and now I was standing here hearing that my marriage was being dissolved behind my back. Are you sure? I finally managed, and I hated how small that sounded, like I was asking her to double-check a restaurant reservation.
My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was pushing against my throat. Mara exhaled slowly.
Lena, she said, and her voice dropped softer. I recognized the address.
I recognized your name. I recognized you. I can't represent him. It's a conflict. But I needed you to know.
I'm so sorry. It was a Tuesday night when I first started to notice my husband's version of privacy wasn't just him needing space, it was him building walls. That's the thing that makes this story hard to tell without sounding dramatic. Because if I tell you, he tried to divorce me in secret, it sounds like a movie villain. It sounds like someone twirling a mustache while they hide legal documents under a mattress.
Real life isn't like that.
Real life is your husband smiling at you across a dinner table, asking if you want more rice, while he's quietly meeting lawyers on his lunch break. It's him telling you he's swamped at work while he's gathering evidence of your instability by baiting you into arguments and then walking away calm so you look like the one who can't control yourself. It's him changing one password and then another, not enough to set off alarms, just enough to make you feel a little off balance. Like you woke up and the furniture moved an inch in the night. I'm going to give you context, but I'm going to skip some of the boring parts because otherwise we'll be here forever, and honestly the boring parts are what make you forgive things you shouldn't. The short version is, my husband, Owen, and I had been together 9 years, married for 6.
We weren't some whirlwind couple.
We were the kind of couple people described as solid. We had a townhouse with 1 2-small bathroom, a golden retriever mix named Buster, and a routine that looked good from the outside.
We both worked.
We didn't have kids yet, not for lack of trying, not for lack of wanting, but because life kept happening, and then that thing happened where trying becomes a monthly appointment with disappointment and you start scheduling your intimacy like you're booking a dentist.
Owen was the funny one. Not in a loud way.
In that dry, observant way where he'd lean over and whisper a comment at a party and you'd almost choke on your drink.
I loved that about him.
He had this calm presence that made me feel like I could exhale. In the beginning, that calm felt like maturity. Later, I started to wonder if it was just detachment. Like he never actually got in the pool with me. He just stood on the edge, watching, ready to step back if the water got too cold.
We met at a friend's game night.
He had this slightly rumpled sweater and a confident way of sitting in someone else's apartment like he belonged there.
He listened when people talked. That's what got me.
He didn't compete for attention.
He asked questions.
I remember thinking, oh, he's safe. Which is a ridiculous thing to decide after an hour. But I did. And for a while, he was. For a while, I felt chosen.
Mara, my roommate, was part of that earlier life.
She was the kind of person who could make a dorm room feel like a home, string lights, playlists, tea, the whole thing. She used to sit cross-legged on her bed and highlight textbooks like it was art.
She went on to law school.
We stayed friends loosely after graduation, birthday texts, the occasional I miss you, the polite social media likes. The kind of friendship you assume you'll revive properly someday when you have time. And then someday doesn't come because your life fills up with groceries and commutes and laundry and trying to keep a marriage healthy in the quiet ways no one posts about. So when she called me, standing in my kitchen with my wet hands and my dog staring like he could tell something changed, it wasn't just shock. It was this surreal collision of worlds, my old life tapping my current life on the shoulder and saying, hey,
you're not crazy. Something is happening.
I said, Owen, came to you, like I needed the words to match my husband's face.
Owen who kissed my forehead before work. Owen who complained about traffic. Owen who asked if we should repaint the living room.
Owen who said, we'll be okay, every time I got anxious about money or fertility or my mom's health.
That Owen. Mara's voice got tight. He came in under Owen Hartley, she said.
No mention of you, obviously. He wanted, she stopped herself, like she caught her own tongue.
I can't tell you everything. I'm not supposed to.
And this is where I feel gross, Lena. Because I'm calling you, and a part of me is thinking, what am I risking here? And then another part of me is thinking, if I don't call, how am I supposed to live with myself? So I'm going to keep it simple.
His planning to file. His asking how to move quickly.
His preparing.
Preparing. That word sat in my stomach like something rotten.
I didn't cry right away. My first reaction was this odd, practical calm.
I turned off the faucet. I set the plate down. I looked around my kitchen like I needed to memorize it.
The chipped mug I always used.
The grocery list on the fridge.
The little magnet from a weekend trip Owen and I took where we'd laughed so hard in a tiny diner that the waitress asked if we were okay. I kept thinking, if he's preparing, what have I been doing? Folding towels? Shopping for olive oil?
Living?
Is he cheating? I asked, because that was the only storyline my brain had ready.
Mara hesitated. I don't know, she said honestly.
That's not, he didn't say. She stopped, then tried again.
He didn't frame it like that.
He framed it like, he's unhappy. Like he wants to protect himself. Like he's been walking on eggshells.
I felt my face heat up.
Eggshells, I repeated, and the word tasted bitter. Because that was something Owen had started saying recently, just casually, tossed into conversations like a joke. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around you sometimes. He'd said it once after I got upset that he forgot our anniversary dinner reservations. I'd stared at him, stunned, because I wasn't yelling.
I was just hurt. And he'd looked at me like my hurt was an inconvenience he had to manage. Eggshells.
That's what he said.
I asked, my voice sharper now. Mara exhaled. Lena, I'm sorry, she said again. Please, promise me you won't tell him I called. I'm withdrawing.
I'm making sure my firm withdraws.
I can't be involved. But you need to talk to your own lawyer.
Like, today. It's funny how when someone tells you to do something urgent, your brain immediately tries to slow down time. My first instinct was to call Owen and scream, what the hell? My second instinct was to pretend Mara never called and keep living, because living is easier than shattering. But Mara's voice had this tremor in it that made me believe her in a way I didn't even have to work at.
She wasn't trying to manipulate me. She sounded like someone holding a match over gasoline and begging you to step back.
Okay, I said, and my voice cracked.
Okay. Thank you. Mara paused.
Lena, she said, softer. If I'm wrong, if there's some explanation that makes this less awful, I'll buy you dinner for the rest of your life.
But
I don't think I'm wrong.
After she hung up, I sat on the kitchen floor. I didn't plan to.
My legs just stopped holding me. Buster came over and pressed his head into my shoulder, heavy and warm.
My palms were still damp. My mouth was dry.
I stared at the tile lines and tried to breathe in a normal rhythm like my body wasn't in emergency mode.
And then my phone buzzed again.
A text from Owen, running late.
Client stuff.
Don't wait up. I stared at that text until the words stopped making sense. The casualness of it, how routine it was, felt like a slap. Because now I could see it, client stuff wasn't just work. It was cover. Or it was practice. Or it was a way of being gone without explanation. I did something I'm not proud of, but I'm going to tell you because pretending you're above it is a lie. I went upstairs and opened Owen's home office drawer, the one he always kept locked but had started leaving slightly ajar lately, like he didn't think I'd ever look.
My hands shook as I pulled it open.
I expected something obvious. An envelope, a letterhead, a file labeled divorce. Life isn't that neat. What I found was worse because it was subtle, a printed list of our bank accounts with balances. A folder with copies of the deed. A spreadsheet. Yes, a spreadsheet, titled expenses with line items that weren't ours. Retainer. Consultation.
Filing. Dates. Notes. My chest tightened so hard it felt like my ribs were squeezing my lungs. There was also a little legal pad with his handwriting, Owen's neat, controlled handwriting. It had bullet points. Things like, separate accounts? Timeline. Who keeps house?
Narrative, emotional volatility. Document arguments.
Narrative. I sat in his desk chair and stared at that word.
Narrative.
Like our marriage was a story he could edit.
Like he was preparing his version for an audience, judge, mediator, family, friends, anyone who might ask, why did you leave? And he needed an answer that made him look reasonable. My hands were so shaky I had to grip the edge of the desk to ground myself. I felt this wave of humiliation, not because I'd done something wrong, but because he'd been building a case against me while I'd been trying to fix us. I'd been Googling how to communicate better and marriage counseling near me.
He'd been making bullet points about my supposed instability.
This is where things went wrong, and I'm going to say it plainly. Owen wasn't planning to have a hard conversation.
Owen was planning to win.
I didn't confront him that night. Not because I was scared of him physically, Owen has never raised a hand to me, but because I was scared of what he'd do psychologically.
Owen is good with words. Owen is good at calm.
Owen can make you feel like you're overreacting even when you're holding proof. And if I confronted him without a plan, he'd pivot.
He'd deny. He'd accuse me of snooping.
He'd turn the conversation into me being crazy and him being concerned.
I didn't want to walk into his narrative trap. So I did something else. I started collecting reality. I made copies of everything. I took photos of the legal pad. I emailed myself the spreadsheet. I printed out bank statements from our shared login. Thank God he hadn't changed that password yet. I pulled our last 3 years of tax returns. I looked at our credit card history and circled charges I didn't recognize. I found a hotel bill from 2 months ago that he'd labeled as conference. It had 2 breakfasts charged to the room. I felt my stomach twist, but I kept going because once you start seeing, you can't unsee. I did all of this while acting normal. That part might be the creepiest part of the story. I made dinner. I asked him how his day was. I laughed at one of his stupid jokes because my body did it automatically. Meanwhile, my brain was screaming, he's trying to erase you from your own life. He came home around 9, loosened his tie, kissed me quickly. Sorry, he said. Long day. I watched his face, hunting for guilt. There was none. He looked tired, but not guilty. He looked like a man who believed his choices were justified. Want to watch something? He asked. I nodded, because if I didn't nod, I might break. We sat on the couch. He put his arm around me. His hand rested on my shoulder like a familiar weight. And the whole time I couldn't stop thinking about that legal pad. Narrative. Document arguments. I wondered how many times he'd held me like this while planning to serve me papers. I wondered if he felt anything at all, or if he'd already compartmentalized me into problem to solve. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I'm not going to turn this into legal advice. This is not me telling you what to do in your own situation, but I will tell you what I did because it was the only way my brain could function. I treated it like an emergency project. I found a family law attorney with a reputation for being blunt. Her name was Diane. She had a voice like she'd seen every version of human betrayal and didn't have patience for theatrics. When I told her, I think my husband is planning to file in secret, she didn't gasp. She didn't say, how awful. She said, okay. Do you have documentation? Yes, I said, and the word came out like a relief. Good, she said. Do not confront him until we decide the timing. Do not move money without understanding the consequences.
Do not leave the house unless you want to give him an argument that you abandoned it.
I swallowed. He has a lawyer, I said. But she's my old roommate.
She called me.
There was a pause. That's unusual, Diane said carefully. I know, I admitted. I didn't ask for details.
She just warned me.
Diane's tone sharpened. Do not put her in the middle, she said. And do not mention her to him.
If he finds out she tipped you off, he'll use it.
I won't, I promised.
After that call, I felt something I hadn't felt since Mara hung up, a thin strip of ground under my feet.
Not peace. Not safety. Just traction.
Over the next week, Owen kept acting like nothing was happening, which honestly made me furious in a way I didn't expect.
I thought I'd be heartbroken.
I was, but underneath was this heat, the audacity of him to plan my exit from his life while still letting me fold his laundry.
He started picking fights, subtly. He'd sigh loudly when I asked a normal question.
He'd say things like, "Can you not start?" when I literally hadn't started anything. He'd leave dishes in the sink and then, when I mentioned it, he'd raise his eyebrows like I was being controlling. The pattern became obvious once I was looking for it. He was trying to provoke me. He wanted me to react. He wanted an argument he could later describe as volatile. One evening, he came home and said, "We need to talk." My stomach dropped so fast I felt dizzy. We were standing in the hallway. He still had his coat on. His cheeks were pink from the cold. He looked almost nervous, and for half a second, I thought maybe he was finally going to be honest. "I've been thinking," he said, voice careful. "I feel like we've been disconnected." I kept my face neutral. "Yeah," I said softly. "I feel that too." He nodded, like he'd expected me to disagree. "And I don't know if this is working," he said. "I'm not saying I want to do anything drastic. I'm just saying, maybe we should consider a trial separation. For our mental health." Mental health. Another shield phrase. Another way to make his decision sound noble. I waited. My heart thudded. He added, quickly, "And before you freak out." I looked at him. "Before I freak out," I repeated quietly. He blinked. "That's not what I meant," he said, but his eyes flicked away. "This is the part that doesn't really hold up, in my opinion. The idea that people just fall out of love and that's why they do things like this. Falling out of love doesn't require spreadsheets. Falling out of love doesn't require documenting your spouse's emotional volatility. Falling out of love can be sad, but it's not strategic. Owen wasn't just falling. He was planning." I said, calmly, "What does a trial separation look like to you?" He exhaled, relieved, like he'd expected fireworks. "Maybe you stay with your sister for a bit," he said. "Just to get space." There it was. Not him leaving. Me leaving. Me vacating the house. Me giving him the story that I walked away. I felt my fingers curl in my sleeve. "Why would I leave?" I asked. He frowned, a flash of irritation. "Because you're the one who needs stability," he said. I stared at him. "I need stability," I repeated, and the words sounded surreal. Owen shrugged, like he was reasonable. "You've been emotional," he said. "I'm not blaming you. I just think it would be healthier if we took a break before things get uglier." Uglier. That word felt like a threat. I could feel the urge to scream rising in my chest. Instead, I did what Diane told me to do. I stayed boring. I stayed calm. I didn't give him the reaction he wanted. "I'm not going anywhere tonight," I said. Owen's eyes narrowed slightly. "I'm not trying to kick you out," he said. "But you are," I said quietly, still calm. "You just want me to do it voluntarily." His jaw tightened. "Why are you talking like I'm some villain?" he snapped. "This is exactly what I mean. You turn everything into." "I'm going to bed," I said, cutting him off, and I walked past him. I could feel his stare on my back like heat. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there listening to him breathe beside me and felt this horrible split inside myself. Part of me wanted to reach out and touch him, to remind myself he was real. Part of me wanted to get up and run. Part of me wanted to laugh at the absurdity. We were sharing a bed while he was trying to stage my departure like a chess move. The next day, Owen apologized. Sort of. He brought home my favorite pastry. He kissed my cheek. He said, "I'm sorry I got intense last night." He didn't apologize for what he actually said. He apologized for my reaction. That's another pattern I started seeing clearly. He never owned the root, just the surface.
2 days later, he changed the password to our shared savings account. I found out because my login failed.
I tried again.
Failed.
I stared at the screen, then looked up like someone might be watching me.
My stomach turned cold.
When Owen came home, I said casually, "Hey, did the bank change something? I couldn't log into savings today."
Owen didn't even pause. "Oh," he said. "Yeah, I updated passwords. Security.
You know how it is.
Can you send it to me?" I asked, still casual. He smiled. "I'll do it later," he said.
And then he walked into the kitchen and started talking about work like nothing happened. Later never came.
That was the day Diane filed first. Not in some dramatic courtroom scene. It was paperwork. Emails. A signature.
A quiet decision that felt like swallowing ice. Diane explained that filing first didn't mean winning, but it meant we controlled timing and prevented Owen from serving me at work like a spectacle. She also explained temporary orders, disclosure, all the unsexy stuff that determines whether you keep access to money you've literally contributed to. I remember sitting in Diane's office, signing papers, and feeling like my hand wasn't mine. My signature looked wrong, shaky. Diane watched me and said, "You don't have to be sure you're ready. You just have to be sure you're not going to let him run you over."
I nodded, swallowing hard. We arranged for Owen to be served at his office the next afternoon.
I didn't tell him. That part felt cruel, but also fair.
Because he hadn't told me. He was planning to do it to me. He just didn't expect I'd step out of the trap. That morning, Owen made coffee like usual. He hummed while he poured it.
He asked me if I wanted oat milk or regular, like he wasn't preparing to remove me from his life. I watched him and felt something complicated: grief, anger, disbelief, and this uncomfortable realization. A person can act loving without being loyal.
That's something I didn't fully understand before. He left with a kiss on my forehead. The door closed.
I stood in the hallway staring at the empty space, and my hand started shaking so badly I had to sit down on the floor again. Buster trotted over and leaned his body against me like a warm wall. I pressed my face into his fur and breathed. At 3:17 p.m., Owen called me. I answered on the second ring, voice steady because I forced it. "What the hell is this?" Owen hissed, and his calm was gone. His voice was sharp, panicked, furious, like someone had flipped him upside down. I paused, like I didn't understand. "What is what?" I asked. He made a sound, almost a growl. "I just got served," he snapped. "At my office. In front of." He stopped. His breath was loud in the receiver. "Lena, what are you doing?"
This is the moment I wish I could tell you I felt empowered and strong and triumphant. I didn't. I felt nauseous. I felt like I'd just done something irreversible.
I also felt, faintly, like I could finally breathe because the pretending was over.
"I'm doing what you were doing," I said quietly.
"Just not in secret."
There was a long silence.
Then Owen's voice went suddenly controlled again, lower, colder.
"Who told you?" he asked. I didn't answer. "Who told you?" he repeated, sharper. I swallowed.
"Does it matter?" I asked. "It matters," he snapped. "Because this is insane. You blindsided me." I actually laughed, just once, because the irony was so absurd it was almost funny. "I blindsided you," I repeated. "Yes," he said, like it was obvious. "I was trying to do this, respectfully."
Respectfully. That word made my stomach twist.
Respectfully would have been sitting down and saying, "I'm unhappy. I want a divorce."
Respectfully would have been transparency.
Respectfully would have been not building a narrative about my volatility while smiling at me over dinner.
"You were trying to do it quietly," I said.
"So you could control it." "That's not." Owen started, then stopped and shifted tactics fast.
Okay. So you're doing this. Fine.
But you can't just, Lena, you don't even know what you're signing. You're being emotional. There it was. Emotional. His favorite label. "I'm actually being very practical," I said, and my voice surprised me with how steady it sounded.
Owen exhaled hard.
"You have no idea how bad this looks," he said.
"How bad it looks," I repeated. "Not how bad it is." Owen went quiet.
Then, softly, almost threateningly, "You're going to regret making this ugly."
I felt a chill spread down my arms.
I didn't make it ugly, I said. I just stopped letting you manage it.
He hung up. That night, he came home late. Not with flowers. Not with apologies. With anger. He walked in like the house owed him something. His jaw was tight. His eyes were hard.
You had me served at work, he said, voice low. Do you understand what you did? I was standing in the kitchen, holding a mug I wasn't drinking. My hands were steady, but I could feel my pulse in my wrists.
I understand, I said.
Owen stepped closer. Who, he said, each word clipped, told you.
I looked at him.
I'm not playing that, I said.
His eyes narrowed.
You don't get to play innocent, he snapped.
You went into my desk.
You stole my documents.
I blinked.
Stole?
I repeated. Owen's lip curled.
You invaded my privacy, he said, voice rising.
My chest tightened.
My privacy?
I asked.
Owen, you were planning my divorce like a work project.
He pointed at me. This is exactly what I mean, he said.
You take everything and twist it, Anne.
No, I cut in, and my voice sharpened.
You twist things. You were collecting evidence of me being unstable.
You were changing passwords.
You were telling me to go stay with my sister so you could claim I left. Don't stand here and call me the manipulator. Owen froze. For a second, his face flickered. Surprise, then calculation, then anger again. So you admit you went through my stuff, he said, latching onto the easiest angle. Great. That's healthy.
I stared at him.
You want to talk about healthy?
I asked, and my throat tightened. You want to talk about trust? You want to talk about respect?
Because you can't keep using therapy words like they are shields.
Owen's eyes flashed. I'm not the villain here, he said, voice cold.
I've been unhappy for a long time. This was the part that didn't sit right with me, not because people can't be unhappy, but because he was acting like unhappiness justified deception. Like being unhappy gave him permission to orchestrate my life without my consent. You could have said that, I said quietly. At any point. You could have said, I'm unhappy. Instead you went to a lawyer. Owen's jaw clenched.
I did what I had to, he said. I nodded slowly.
So did I said.
He stared at me like he didn't recognize me.
Like he'd expected me to crumble. Like he'd expected tears and begging and bargaining. And I'll be honest, that version of me existed. She was in there, trembling. She wanted to plead. She wanted to salvage. But she was also exhausted. And something in me had snapped the day Mara called, like a thread that had been holding me to Owen's version of reality just broke. Owen turned abruptly and walked upstairs.
He packed a bag loudly. He slammed a drawer.
He came back down and stood in the doorway, bag in hand, eyes hard. You're making a huge mistake, he said. I looked at him, and my voice came out almost calm. I think the mistake was thinking you'd treat me like a partner, I said. Owen's nostrils flared. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something devastating, then stopped. His eyes flicked to the dog, who was watching him with that simple animal loyalty that doesn't understand betrayal. Then Owen walked out. The door clicked shut. And the house was quiet. You'd think that would be the end of the story. It wasn't. It was the start of the messier part. The part where the legal process drags on while your emotional process does something weird, like it moves backward some days. There were mornings I woke up and forgot for half a second, and then remembered and felt like someone punched me. There were nights I sat on the couch and stared at the wall and thought, maybe I overreacted. Maybe I should have confronted him first. Maybe. And then I'd remember his legal pad. Narrative. Document arguments. And my stomach would turn again. Owen tried to charm his way back into control. He texted me like nothing happened sometimes. Did you feed Buster? We need to talk about the mortgage. You're being irrational. He'd swing between practical and cruel like it was a strategy. He also tried the sympathy angle. He sent a long message about how he never wanted to hurt me, how he felt trapped, how he didn't know how to bring it up. He said he planned a quiet divorce because he didn't want drama. Drama. He kept saying that word, as if drama is something women create when men are forced to face consequences. One weekend, he showed up unannounced, knocked on the door like he still lived here, and said, "Can we just talk without lawyers?" I didn't let him in. I stood on the porch with my hands in my jacket pockets, the winter air cold enough to sting my nose, and said, "No."
Owen frowned.
"Lena," he said, using that tone he used when he wanted to sound patient, "you're letting other people influence you."
I almost laughed.
"Other people?" I asked. "Like, your lawyer."
Owen's eyes flashed.
"That's different," he snapped.
How? I asked quietly.
"How is that different?"
He stared at me, jaw tight.
Then he said something that still makes my skin crawl a little because it was so revealing, because I was trying to do it the right way.
The right way. For him.
The right way where he controls timing, optics, money, story. The right way where I'm surprised and scrambling and ashamed.
He leaned closer.
"You don't even know what's in those papers," he said. "You're signing your life away." I held his gaze. "I know you were trying to sign mine away without my knowledge," I said.
His face hardened. "This is why I couldn't talk to you," he said.
"You always turn it into an accusation."
I stared at him.
"It is an accusation," I said. "Because you did it."
Owen's mouth tightened.
He looked away briefly, then back. "You're going to regret being like this," he said, and it sounded less like sadness and more like punishment.
I didn't respond. I just stood there until he finally left.
There were moments, in the middle of all this, when I almost missed him.
That's hard to admit because it sounds pathetic. But grief is stupid like that. You miss the person you thought existed. You miss routines. You miss the idea of someone coming home. You miss the safety you believed in.
I'd catch myself making 2 cups of coffee and then stare at the second cup like it was mocking me. And then there were moments when I felt something like relief so sharp it scared me. Like the day I realized I could eat dinner without monitoring Owen's mood. Like the day I watched a movie and didn't worry if he'd complain about my choice. Like the day I slept through the night without listening for his keys.
It took me a while to call Mara back. I did, eventually.
Not for details, she couldn't give them. Not for help, she shouldn't.
But because I needed to acknowledge the moment she chose to risk something to warn me.
When she answered, her voice was cautious. "Lena."
"It's me," I said. My throat tightened. I wanted to say thank you.
Mara exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath for a week.
"Are you okay?" she asked.
"No," I said honestly. "But
I'm not blindsided." There was a long pause.
Then Mara said softly, "I'm sorry."
I keep replaying it.
I keep thinking, what if I shouldn't have called?
What if I messed up?
This is the uncomfortable observation I promised, because it's not neat and it doesn't make me look like the perfect victim. Part of me felt uneasy that Mara called at all.
Not because I didn't want the warning.
I did. It saved me. But I also realized how thin the line is between friendship and ethics and loyalty, and how easily life forces you to choose something you'll feel weird about forever.
Mara might have put her career at risk. She might have crossed a boundary. She did it because she cared. And now we both had to live with the ambiguity of that choice.
"I don't know what's supposed to happen," I said carefully. "I just know that if you hadn't called, he would have served me at work and I would have been scrambling and humiliated and he would have framed it like I was unstable."
Mara's voice cracked.
"That's what scared me," she admitted.
The way he talked.
The way he rehearsed. Rehearsed.
Yes. That word landed like truth. We didn't talk long. We couldn't.
But when we hung up, I sat on my couch and stared at the wall and felt this strange gratitude mixed with sadness that life had brought my college roommate back into my life like an alarm bell.
The divorce dragged on.
Owen tried to paint me as unreasonable.
He pushed for things that didn't make sense.
He claimed I was emotionally volatile and then, in the next breath, claimed I was cold and detached. He couldn't even keep his narrative consistent, which would have been funny if it hadn't been my life.
Diane was good. She didn't get riled up.
She just documented everything and kept reminding me, let him talk. The paper trail matters. One of the most surreal moments was mediation. Sitting in a beige room with bad coffee, across from the man I married, while a neutral third party tried to talk about our home like it was an object instead of the place I cried on the kitchen floor. Owen wore a crisp shirt and looked calm, like he was at a meeting.
He barely looked at me.
When he did, it was like he was measuring whether I was behaving. At one point, he leaned forward and said, "I just want this to be civil."
Civil, another nice word.
I looked at him and said, quietly, "Civil would have been telling me you were filing." Owen's lips pressed into a thin line. He looked to the mediator like I was being difficult. The mediator cleared his throat and said, "Let's focus on solutions." Solutions.
Sure. Solutions to betrayal. Solutions to deception.
Solutions to the fact that I had been living with a man who saw my life as something he could rearrange without my consent. I signed the final papers months later, sitting at my kitchen table, Buster's head on my foot, my pen hovering for a second like I was waiting for lightning to strike.
Nothing dramatic happened. I just signed.
My signature looked steadier this time. I didn't feel triumphant.
I felt hollow.
And also, quietly, proud of myself for not letting him write the whole story.
Owen moved into an apartment across town.
I heard through mutual friends that he told people we grew apart, and it was mutual, and she got really intense.
I didn't correct them.
Not because I was above it, because I was tired. And because anyone who wanted the truth could ask me. Anyone who didn't ask, didn't really want it. The last time Owen and I spoke in person, it was outside the townhouse, when he came to pick up the last box of his stuff. It was raining lightly, the kind of drizzle that makes everything smell like wet pavement. He loaded the box into his trunk and stood there for a moment, keys in hand, looking like he might say something real. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said finally, voice low. I looked at him.
I believed he believed that. I also believed it didn't matter. Intent doesn't undo strategy.
Intent doesn't erase bullet points on a legal pad. "You still did," I said. Owen nodded, jaw tight. "You didn't have to make it so hard," he muttered. That line, still trying to make my response the problem, was the final confirmation I needed. Even at the end, he wasn't sorry for what he did.
He was sorry it didn't go smoothly.
I watched him get into his car and drive away, taillights fading in the rain, and I felt this lingering, unfinished feeling I can't quite explain.
Not closure.
Not peace.
More like acceptance with a bruise on it.
Like I'd survived something quiet and calculated, and now I had to rebuild trust in my own perceptions.
Because the real damage wasn't just that he tried to divorce me.
It was that he did it while convincing me, day after day, that I was the unstable one for noticing the walls he was building. What stands out to me now, months later, when the adrenaline is gone, is how normal everything looked right up until it wasn't.
That's the scary part. Not the dramatic betrayal. The ordinary one.
The kind where your spouse makes coffee and texts don't wait up and smiles at you while they quietly assemble an exit plan.
People talk about heartbreak like it's explosive. Sometimes it's administrative. Sometimes it's a spreadsheet.
Sometimes it's a bullet point labeled narrative. And if you're listening to this thinking, "I would have noticed," I'm not going to argue with you.
Maybe you would have. Maybe you're sharper than I was.
Or maybe you haven't had someone you love look you in the eye and calmly reshape reality until you start apologizing for asking basic questions. Because that's what happens slowly. You don't lose the relationship all at once. You lose your confidence in your own instincts, inch by inch, until the day someone like Mara calls and you realize you weren't crazy.
You were just being managed. Thanks for watching.
If you've ever discovered someone was planning your life behind your back, divorce papers, secret accounts, a quiet exit they thought you wouldn't see, share your story in the comments. I read them, and I think it helps more than people admit to know you weren't the only one caught living inside someone else's narrative.